Hello. My name is Barbara Drattina, and I'm the founder and CEO of Wellness Matters, You Matter. And I'm so grateful to Anne and to Marianne and Danica and Dr. Mark and Tina and all the people that have brought this retreat with you today. It took a lot of work behind the scenes, and I'm so grateful because we need to get this message out. We need to talk about awareness and this issue. It is a hidden topic, actually, and painful to talk about, and people aren't willing to talk about it. So I'm really honored to speak with you today. And as I said, I wish it was on a different subject. And I'm so sorry that you are dealing with this damaging situation. I hope that what I share with you today will be of value to you. Let me tell you a little bit about myself so that you can better understand the context from which I share. I have been living with parental alienation for many years. My final divorce decree was actually in 1997. And even then I noticed seeds being planted to erase me. And I stayed as long as I could, which was 10 years too long. And maybe you have too. And I now realize that I was really afraid to leave. But when the emotional abuse became unbearable, I had to leave, or I know that I would die. My background is in early childhood education, and I have a good understanding of behavior patterns, and I saw what was happening with my children and with their dad. But back in the day, parental alienation was not identified and rarely addressed if it was pointed out. I felt isolated and afraid to talk about it to others, as I'm sure many of you are too, and rightly so. And at that time, there was no internet, no cell phones, no support groups, and very little information on this topic. The only thing I had was Dr. Gardner's book. And the reason I'm sharing this with you today is to point out that now there are resources, just like we're having this retreat today. So please take advantage. And I urge you to rely on them as much as possible. We all know how traumatizing, frustrating, and hopeless this journey can be. And we can't do it alone. We need a village to survive. It is my belief that the laws are ineffective and they take too much time for them to change. And there's always a risk that they're not even going to be enforced. I believe that change will happen when there's a ground root swell and demand for change. Our children are suffering and even dying because they are being radicalized. It's my opinion that time is of the essence because we need to save our children, and legislation just takes too long. Over the years, I've experienced a lot of different scenarios that I've had to adapt to. I was put in situations where I had to compromise my parental rights in the best interests of my children. The laws did not protect me. Strangers had more authority on my children's well-being than I did as their parent. I was misguided by attorneys and was left with the consequences of their rulings. Then something unthinkable happened. My daughter, Erin, took her life. She was 15 years old. And to this day, 20 years later, the alienation continues. This is the face of parental alienation. I had a relationship with my other daughter up until about 2 years ago. It was often strained and uncomfortable because she was aligned with the alienator and I was walking on eggshells. She's now 37 years old. And after 25 years of walking this tightrope, known as parental alienation, we are estranged, which was never the case before. She's also divorced, and I believe she's back under the influence of her father. I was present for my grandson's birth and I took care of him for 3 years. And I used those 3 years to pour as much love as I could on him. Because of my background in early childhood education, I know that children remember. They have a subconscious response and he will recognize and know the love I had for him. Because the first few years of life are the most important, and they may not be, even verbal, but they remember subconsciously. And I knew that at any minute something could change. So I used every minute to be the loving grandmother that hopefully he would come to know and love. As of today, my daughter has cut me off from herself and my grandson, and I have no idea why. The last time that I saw him, he told me that I was not his grandmother, that he already had his grandparents because he has four. My former husband remarried. Having the knowledge and the feeling that I've instilled in him that it will not be lost is a small comfort to me. The pain of parental alienation can be unbearable at times. And as you can see, it's unpredictable. You know, I share all this background with you to prepare you. This is a marathon and not a sprint. There are things that I learned that I hope will be able to help you on your journey, things I learned not to do, and things I practice in order to be able to cope. This is ongoing trauma, and it's very damaging if not addressed and regulated. We are dealing with a continuous trauma and most likely complex PTSD. Here is a definition of continuous trauma. Trauma has extreme and potentially devastating effects on emotional health, especially when it lasts a long time. People who are exposed to danger repeatedly or for a long time may develop continuous strategic stress disorder, CTSD, as a response. And I want to clarify that I'm not a psychologist or a therapist, but I do have a background in education and behavior, and I have studied it. And more importantly, I have 25 years of experience of being and dealing and living with extreme parental alienation. So when dealing with parental alienation for the long haul, I have found these three things key to be able to live as a targeted parent. And that's the main topic of my talk today. So resiliency, we've been hearing it a lot lately because of the times and the situations that we are living in globally. But there is a saying, blessed are the flexible because they will not be bent out of shape. Be flexible, be fluid, be open. And that's a quote by Victor Wooten. I live in Florida, and I often think of the palm tree and why they survive hurricanes. I mean, they bend and flex no matter how strong the winds. And we've had some pretty big hurricanes in Florida recently. So for me, resiliency begins with self-care. You know, I used to think of myself as last on the list. I pushed myself to the limits, fighting for my rights and for my children. I didn't understand that self-care comes first. If we do not take care of ourselves, we do not show up for ourselves, our children, the courts, our jobs, and all other relationships that we have. You get the picture. Make this non-negotiable. And as you can see by my story, things can change over time, and the outcomes are unpredictable. Anything can change in an instant, and I want to prepare you because in the end, you may just have you. And I apologize for being so honest, but I feel being prepared for the unknown is crucial in the framework of parental alienation and allows us to be more resilient and accepting. And knowledge is power. We all deal with anxiety in life, especially now. But this level of anxiety is like unlike any other anxiety that I deal with in any other area of my life. And it impacts everything in my life. We have a switch called the fight or flight switch, and it's for emergency use only. It is not meant to be on 24/7. But with parental alienation, it actually is, and it physically harms our body. Our body follows our mind. So taking care of our mind is a priority, and feeling your best mentally and physically is very important in building your resilience. So it can be helpful to remember this acronym, MEDS, MEDS. Mind your mind. Our mind needs a rest from the constant problem-solving dilemma of parental alienation. When we relax our mind, we're better problem solvers. And it is a proven fact. And this is something that we can control. Learn how to manage your thoughts. Are they fear mongers? Are they energy vampires? Are they Debbie Doubters? You know, don't let them enter into your head. I didn't know I could manage my thoughts. I just thought they were on free flow. I didn't know any better, and they really sabotaged me. I just blabbed to everybody. And if you'd like to know more about tools and techniques to help you with this, I can help you, or other professionals that have put on this retreat today. Mindfulness practices, walking in nature. It's called a nature bath, and doctors are actually writing scripts for this for their patients because it is proven to lower your stress response and anxiety. Ground yourself by being barefoot on the ground or walk in the grass. There are many resources and videos available today. We have YouTube and we have apps. There are many techniques that you can do that are very simple. And you can do them anywhere, when you're at a stoplight waiting for a train or a bridge, and even in court, because breath is a tool that we can use. Meditation. I cannot expound enough on meditation and the benefits. Learning how to quiet my mind was the greatest gift that my therapist taught me. It took some time for me to be able to do this, for any length of time. So don't judge or shame yourself. It takes time to rest our monkey mind trying to figure out how to solve or rationalize what's going on in this unnatural situation. Start with 1 minute, because you know what? 1 minute makes a difference. And then you could go to 2 and possibly 3. Today, that's my greatest gift, that coming from this situation, because when your mind is quiet, it allows solutions to come forth into your consciousness, and it's helped me so much. Movement, rigorous exercise, spinning, that's cycling, dancing, all these things allow your cells to emotionally detox. We store our emotions in our cells, and our thoughts, such as anger, resentment, and negative emotions, are stored in all of our cells. Spin class at the gym really saved my life, because when you're in the zone, I couldn't think of anything else. It gave me rest, and believe it or not, some of the very best solutions came to me, and not just on parental alienation, for marketing, for my job, for other areas of my life as well. Be mindful of whom you disclose things to. Be careful who you take advice from. Be discerning, but listen and trust your gut. Our journey is like no other. And I use the analogy of being held hostage with very limited access to people that truly understand and can help us. Trust the people showing up today. Be careful of your children's friends and their parents, their teachers, medical providers, because you do not know what lens they are looking at you from. That was a big mistake for me. I just, expounded to everyone. I whined and complained. Do not do it. It can hurt your case. And the last M is M&Ms. Enjoy some chocolate. Do something kind for yourself. You have to be able to be gentle and compassionate with yourself. And my favorite M&Ms are the blue ones. E is for exercise. Did you know that you can energize yourself by including physical activity into your day? It is another non-negotiable. Circulation allows energy and blood to flow for your motion, so they do not get stuck in your body, which causes disease and pain, adding to the whole situation when you are not at your best. Energy is created by moving and exercise. Rigorous exercise is used to release trauma and anxiety. There are certain techniques that have been brought to Syria and to the people of Haiti after the earthquake, and I'm sure those skills, if not being used now, and those tools will be used in the Ukraine and all over the world, because right now we are very dysregulated. D is for diet. Diet matters. Decide what foods are fueling your body and what foods are creating fatigue or anxiety. It is so easy to just grab whatever is available, or to start emotional eating. Gaining additional weight often hurts your self-esteem and your self-worth, and we need every bit of self-worth to show up for your children, to show up for any court proceedings, and to be present with people that are detrimental to us. Detoxing your body is also very helpful. The less toxins, the better. Toxins accumulate in our body and play an important role in our mental capacity and focus. Decrease alcohol use. It is a depressant and it can lead to alcoholism when we are in this state of mind. Don't drink unhealthy energy drinks. Again, this can lead to energy fatigue and crashes and depression. Choose healthy, nootropic brain fueling products. And if you need suggestions, reach out to me. S is for sleep. And I know this is a really hard thing to do, but it's so important for our bodies to be rested. And our body, again, is detoxing through the night. Sound quality sleep is one of the most powerful ways to reduce stress and depression while increasing energy, memory, and learning. Sound tools are available on apps today that are free, that can calm your nerves and your nervous system so that you can sleep and are soundly. And now that brings us to faith. Faith. I found this definition of faith to fit my parental alienation journey. Faith isn't a feeling, it's a choice to trust God even when the road ahead seems uncertain. What a powerful topic this is. It doesn't matter what religion you practice or if you don't. I urge you to find faith in something bigger than yourself. It will help to keep you centered. Faith was my rock. I could not go on without faith. It was a different faith than what I'd ever known before. I was brought up in a specific religion and even went to an all-girls high school. However, when my daughter started exhibiting behavior issues, and I was trying to get her help, and her father was blocking every avenue, I was brought to my knees. And that is when I found a higher level of spirituality. I thank God that right then I was really diving deeper into my faith, because nothing could have prepared me for my daughter taking her life. Nothing. Even though she was acting out, it was not on my radar. I didn't think she would be capable or want or choose to do something like that. You know, when I was reading this book by Bruce Wilkerson, the night I heard the news, and in the book it said, whether we live 100 years or 5 years, our work here is done. And that gave me solace. I know it doesn't sound right, but this knowingness came upon me that, we don't know what's supposed to happen. But in the bigger picture, for some reason, this was a part of the plan. And I believe that my daughter passed me a baton to speak out on suicide and on parental alienation. So now my daughter had free will, and she refused help. It was driving me crazy. I watched her go downhill, just as I have watched other children go down quickly after being thrust into the unnatural paradigm to hate one of their parents. If a child chooses to dislike or hate their parent when they're an adult or they've experienced extreme physical abuse, that's a different dichotomy. Our children are being forced to not only turn their back on the other parent, but to show cruelty beyond their capacity. This is totally unnatural. And my daughter was enduring something that was too much for her to cope with. She took her life in her father's home while he was home. So think about that. I know how hard it is to let our children go and visit the other parent. And we're being blocked as if we're the bad parents that are going to hurt them. And that's why I'm here today to share my story. Our children cannot be put into an alienation situation and not come out unscathed. The judges and attorneys don't understand the long-term consequences that face our children and all the lives impacted by their rulings. Children aren't going to tell you how they feel. They often feel responsible for their parents' divorce or separation in the first place. They might not be brave enough to stand up to the perpetrator because it can make their situation worse. There's a personality today running havoc with our world. And it's my opinion that it's the same type of behavior because they will stop at nothing. This is where faith kicks in. The whole situation is bigger than me. I cannot make sense of it. Fighting against the perpetrator and a broken system is exhausting. Outcomes are inconsistent and unpredictable. I fought long and hard for justice and change. I had 3 different approaches with 3 different attorneys that claimed they understood parental alienation, only for matters to be made worse. This past Father's Day, I received shocking news from a relative after 30 years. She shared some valuable information with me, and I honor that she reached out to me. When Erin was 13 years old, she noticed that my daughter had written on a mirror in her father's home that she wanted to kill herself. And it looked like the evidence, someone had tried to erase the evidence. This person is a social worker. So she pleaded with Erin's father to get help, but he just blew her off. She's a teenager, she's uncomfortable. And she was always a conflicted kind of a child. I must clarify, from a toddler, she was a conflicted child, but she was a brilliant mind and a beautiful girl. She didn't know, my relative didn't know that I had a court order for Erin to get help and that her dad was actually blocking her from receiving any help. So think about that. My former husband would rather withhold this information and risk the life of his daughter than give that information to me as the other parent. And today I am the bad parent, and my other daughter calls him her hero. This is the face of parental alienation. And almost 20 years have passed since my daughter took her life. And I'd come to accept this and even really became peaceful about it. Last May, I published my story in a compilation book and to create awareness on suicide and this issue of parental alienation that so many people are unaware of, and how to move past a tragedy like that in your life. But when I heard that news and that part of the story, I could barely function. I started having panic attacks and I couldn't breathe. And learning this did 2 things. And this was on Father's Day last year that I received this information. 1, it triggered a huge trauma response with the thought that this man I'd lived with over 20 years knew that her daughter wanted to kill herself and did nothing. And number 2, it released me from an unconscious feeling that I was the one being blamed for her death because I was being alienated. I really felt like I'd walked through all that, but you don't know what's stored in your unconscious mind. And I felt this sense of, oh my gosh, this man is even willing to pin this on me. And I think that I'm the one paying the price for my former husband's guilt. Who do I go to process this? It was Father's Day. I'm part of a large holistic community of psychologists and healers, but they were celebrating their fathers, or their husbands were celebrating with their children. And very few people really understand how to deal with parental alienation, much less someone that is a long hauler dealing with this. So even after all these years, my family doesn't understand. Friends can't understand. They do not know, they just can't believe that a parent could do such a thing. Or they all think that you must have done something to deserve this. Yes, that's often a sentence. The recipe I found to go through this was unfaltering faith coupled with compassion, because our children are victims too that are doing this. When blanketed with despair, I find myself repeating, "Forgive them, Father, for they do not know what they do." Mary couldn't stop what was happening to Jesus. And I think of her agony as a mother watching this happen to her son. And it gives me some solace. And I don't feel so alone. And I think of Jesus Christ and the other spiritual entities that were tortured. And I have faith that there are things that I do not know or have the ability to understand, just like you might not know how to make this nightmare stop and understand why it is happening in the first place. And the last tool in my Trifecta toolbox is detachment. Learning how to detach has been so valuable to me. When I first learned about detachment and tried it, it felt like I was in denial. I felt guilty, like I wasn't caring enough. But detachment is a very useful tool, and so it is worth learning and practicing. The definition of detachment is the state of being objective or aloof. During my many personal growth seminars and courses that I have taken, I keep hearing about the role of the shadow self or the silent observer. What the heck was that? I remember thinking. Just like you see your shadow on the sidewalk when you take a walk, I picture myself as that shadow, watching and observing what is happening. It brings relief, and it also can bring insight. When we're able to do this, we're able to observe the situation, accept new verdicts, hear new information or issues with our children in a calm, detached way. This is a vital tool when appearing in court, talking with a teacher, or being put in a situation with the perpetrator. The greatest benefit I've experienced with detachment is detaching from judging. I do not know about your journey, but I have had to detach the feelings of being judged by family, by friends, and so many others. I was often paralyzed by the stories that I made up in my own head. And I don't know about you, but it just made it so much more worse for me. And I began to isolate and hide my truth because parental alienation is riddled with judgment, even from people that you do not know. So my greatest power has been having the courage to stand in my truth and remember not to take the bait and engage. When other people think of me is none of my business. Detachment allows you to manage your fight or flight response. It's like having a dimmer switch on your emotions and being able to pause or remain neutral until you can figure out how to respond is golden. It lifts you up in the eyes of the courts, your employer, your clients, and other parents, whatever the case may be. These are the essential tools that I have employed in order to cope and live with a life sentence of parental alienation. I may not see my children. My grandson may choose not to know me, or he might be furious that he was blocked from the love of his grandmother. And I'm sorry, this is painful. I don't know what's in store, but if I can remain resilient, have unfaltering faith in the unknown, and use my shadow self tool, I can create a life worth living. Thank you so much for being here. And I'll pray for you on your journey today. And please plug in and use all the resources available for you in your regard, and there are some posted in this retreat by great people. Thank you again.